It is already getting completely ridiculous, with some outlets, including The Athletic, have Montreal trading down 4 spots in the draft. Plus, another one, The Score, has Montreal taking a player that no one expects them to get at number 5. We got to get into all of these mock drafts after the draft lottery. Plus, Kent Hughes spoke out in a recent press conference about what he might do come draft time, and he left some little hints that we got to analyze, all coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. And without further ado, we got to start with Kent Hughes, Jesse, and this was extremely interesting. If you guys didn't catch it, I suggest you go take a look at Kent Hughes' reaction to the 2024 NHL Draft Lottery. He had about a 15-minute press conference there, and he had some great answers, including these. Someone asked him about what it would take to trade in the draft. He said it would take an offer that helps us next year, this is all in French, but also one that would help us long-term at the same time. And eventually concluded by saying, but I expect to draft where we are. He also went on to say, all things equal, we would draft a forward, and that remains the case. Some interesting hints here, Jesse. Of course, people talking about maybe moving, but it seems to me like Kent is dead set on that number 5 pick, even going as far as saying his scouts have said that they are supremely confident that they will get a guy that they like at number 5. Maybe a trade is something that maybe we shouldn't be preparing for.
Most likely that they'll stay at 5 and use that pick. But I think Kent said something else that hints to other major moves that he will be doing, right? And he's keeping his cards close to his chest. We know that's how he likes to cook, but he was asked a very interesting question. He was asked,
someone cooked here.
Like, the Montreal Canadiens, next year, do you expect to be picking so high next year? And Kent Hughes, Chef Hughes, what he had to say back was emphatically right away, he said no. Mm-hmm. He said, next year, we plan on being better. We plan on being in the mix. Now, we know, Josh, that we were finishing as the fifth worst team in the NHL next year. To get there, to now be in the mix, obviously there was a lot of those one-goal games where you have to feel like there's a lot of roster moves that Kent Hughes needs to make to really get there, to be in that conversation, in the mix. So for me, that's the biggest takeaway from this press conference today, is that there's going to be major moves coming to really enable the Montreal Canadiens to be in the mix, maybe even a little bit sooner than we expected.
There could be so much going on. And even when he was asked about, who he's going to draft, will they be an impact player right away, or will they be an impact player down the road further down? He was pretty dead set on saying, like, if it's not this year, it's going to be next year kind of thing, right? Like, they want to make moves, Jesse, whether it's at the draft or after the draft, whenever it is, to make this team solidly competitive. And now, again, one of these moves that we talk about is going to be Kirby Dach coming back. But, maybe he'll trade up from the Winnipeg pick up there. A lot of the questions today were about him moving up from number 5. He actually said that last year he called around, and even other teams were calling him about that number 5 pick. Nothing ended up materializing, but in a draft like this, Jesse, for example, we'll get into some of the projections in a minute, but with all of the top-end talent, especially defensemen and even some top forwards that could go before Montreal's pick, this number 5 pick could be a top, hot commodity, right? So when you have other teams looking at Kent Hughes in his position, let's say Salayev or Levshunov is available, or Demidov, we'll get into that in a bit, I think, honestly, Kent could get a trade that he borderline can't refuse.
I hear you, but that being said, I think Kent is insistent, if it's not moving up, then staying at that 5th overall. Why? Because he basically engineered the entire season for it to kind of come that way, to maximize knowing next year we really want to be in the mix and do so much better. We know we traded Sean Monahan, right? Even as we're kind of being competitive, starting to kind of play a little bit more inspired hockey, right? And we saw how that just affected our draft ranking. But you could argue that that's all really for the best, right? He's really looking to maximize this opportunity here. So it's like, being at 5th, that's the difference between getting a Lindstrom or even a Demidov somehow or not, really. Whereas, maybe as a lot of analysts are saying, and very rightly so, is like, if you're getting at 6 or 7, I agree with them. Like, good chance you're not now getting one of the 3 top offensive players. Now, the big risk in all this, and I think we'll kind of get into this a little bit more, is like, do we still have a chance at 5th overall of getting 3 of the best overall offensive guys in this draft? But I feel like that's why we want to stay there, is we need to give ourselves every single opportunity that we can to draft a forward that Kent Hughes is really looking for.
And I think they're very confident they can do that, whether it's Cayden Lindstrom, whether it's Demidov, whether it's someone like a Beck at Seneca, who apparently the Habs are very high on. But there's also a world where they do move down, Jesse, and they maybe have a guy in mind who they know they could get a bit later. And that's where these rumors are getting completely, well, I want to say ridiculous, because first of all, this potential trade that we're about to highlight is kind of insane. I don't see this ever happening, but it's from The Athletic. And, you know, I'm not saying they're a force on they know everything's going to happen, but this is an interesting proposal from them, so we got to bring this up for you. They propose that the Canadiens trade the number 5 pick in the draft to the Calgary Flames for the number 9 pick and the Vancouver Canucks first-round pick. Now, for reference, that Vancouver Canucks pick is going to be late 20s, if not even in the 30s, if they end up making the Stanley Cup final, right? So you trade like a super late first-round pick and the 9th for the 5th. Seems like a bargain if you're Calgary, if you're me. But in that world, they have Calgary trading up to take Zeev Buium, and I know Flames fans probably won't like to hear that because they want Xhekaj, but Buium is unbelievable, and he fills a big need for Calgary as a number 1 potential defenseman. And Jesse, this has Montreal taking Guhle at number 9. This, to me, is more likely than Montreal trading up. Like we've said, right? I know Kent is probably looking to draft there. Like, he's the kind of guy, in my opinion, like, he's not scared to just take the guy he thinks is best. If they think Xhekaj is best, if they think Beck at Seneca is best, whoever it is, they'll just take them at 5. Because you can never guarantee who's going to go at 6, 7, 8 unless you have, like, a handshake agreement with those teams. But something like this is, like, I mean, maybe ridiculous was too strong a word to use, but it's very intriguing. But I also think that a lot of people are just assuming things are going to go crazy, saying this is the worst case scenario if Cayden Lindstrom goes before. No, I think Montreal has lots of guys they can take, and I don't even think a trade like this moves the needle for Montreal. I think they just take their guy.
Absolutely. I think the Canadiens feel pretty confident in who they'll kind of be able to get, that they'll be able to get a very good player at 5th overall. Of course, that's so much shape. They're doing the research now of what are the other teams looking for? What is important to them?
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. And a lot of other teams, like, who knows what's going to happen, because Chicago is picking her. They could use a solid defenseman, a guy like Korchinski, a guy like Vlasic. They're not really projectable as number 1 guys. Not necessarily, right? They have a lot of other stuff. But Jesse, we got a bit of an ideal scenario here. And I know this is going to make you so happy, right? So happy. Well, me as well. This isn't The Score. They did a mock draft as well, and they had none other than Ivan Demidov going to Montreal at number 5. They had Celebrini at 1. I think it was Levshunov at 2, Salayev at 3, and then Cayden Lindstrom at 4. And they said Montreal's not going to pass on an electrifying, a supremely skilled Russian winger again, just like they did Michkov last time. And they honestly project, like, Jesse, some sizable, a puck-moving defenseman, 2-way guy who skates well like Levshunov, hard to come by, especially on the right side. Salayev, a 6'7" beast, setting some records in the KHL, and Cayden Lindstrom, obviously super highly touted. This is not impossible, and I know for you and for me, this might be the ideal scenario for Montreal.
For sure. I think the most likely situation, though, is we're getting Cayden Lindstrom at 5th overall, because I do believe Demidov is going to go probably at number 2, right? And here's my reasoning why. Like, if I'm Connor Bedard and my opinion matters to the Chicago Blackhawks, which it does a lot as your star player, right? Players like this, they can almost dictate. They can have such a big say on who's being drafted. Obviously, skilled guys like Connor Bedard, they love other skilled guys. At the same time, you can make the conversation that, you know, with the Blackhawks, obviously, they drafted Connor Bedard last year, obviously a star forward. It would make sense to maybe get somebody at right D, right? So, you know, I think there's a good chance that Demidov, just for that talent, just for that skill, we know Bobby Mack has him at number 2, right? So going a little bit earlier. But I think just because of the quality of the D in this draft, which, to be honest, I'm really thankful for, I think for that reason, we'll still be able to get a Cayden Lindstrom, but I'm going to be nervous on draft day because we are cutting it close. You know, of course, we could get that other tier of offensive player, which I would say is kind of there after this top 3. But man, do we ever want one of those top 3 offensive players in this draft?
So excited for it. But again, all these prospects look good to me. And no matter who Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton end up picking, even if it is a defenseman, I know we don't want it. It's not ideally what I want, but I'm going to celebrate it and we're going to pump them up. Hey, honestly, I can see Levshunov in a Habs uniform. What do you guys think? Let us know down below. Could they get Demidov at 5? Is this Flames trade proposal ridiculous for Montreal? We'd love to hear from you. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Guys, we're almost at 12,000. So if you're still watching right now and you haven't hit that button, help get us there. We would really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.